fate of the Albuquerque Rapid Transit Project remains under consideration in the courts this week. A U.S. Appeals Court judge ruled Tuesday, now follow this now, Tuesday that construction must temporarily be on hold, but the city is allowed to continue pre-construction work. Now, last week, a U.S. District Court judge ruled that the project could move forward, but opponents to the project filed an appeal. The appeals judge ordered a temporary injunction on Monday, but then a new ruling on Tuesday allows the city to continue pre-construction work like surveying and stuff like that. Now, the city's woes don't stop there. The City Council is considering two proposals to put the art project up for a public vote in November. It's not clear if a vote on the project would force the city to stop or adjust planned construction. We'll see what happens there. Now, you can see our discussion last week with supporters, opponents, and City of Albuquerque COO Michael Reardon at NewMexicoInFocus.org. Here with me this week to talk about the latest news are our online opinion panelists. Tom Garrity from the Garrity Group PR. Former State Representative Janice Arnold-Jones is here. Laura Sanchez-Rivey, she's an attorney with Cuddy and McCarthy LLP. And former state senator and longtime friend here at the show, Richard Romero, is back. Now, Janice, let's say in November the public does vote to down art. What does that really mean? And you know, beyond just the emotions of it, does there any ramifications here if we say no to this thing?
Well, I would say, so what the administration is going to say is we're going to miss out on all that federal money.
Yes.
We miss out on federal money a lot of times for a lot of reasons. But I think what is happening here is the administration is simply not listening to the people. They thought an expansion of mass transit was good. They don't like this expansion. They don't like the plan. It does not go north-south. Many people do not see the problem that it is solving at all, and they hate the center design. Right. In fact, some people have said to me, that looks like the Denver airport as a small pimple. And I said, but it's going to change colors. And they said, I don't care.
That's funny. Richard, you know, we've had, again, we've had folks pro and con come into the show, and we've had a lot of feedback out in the streets on this. It's a big topic for Albuquerque right now. You're a downtown guy, you own properties downtown, you've been around this part of the city for a long time. What's your personal view on this? Is it going to affect you personally and your properties in lots of ways? Or?
You know, I haven't had a strong feeling either way.
Okay.
I sometimes ask myself if we had a Democratic mayor, if more Democrats would be supporting it or not. I kind of wonder that because, you know, the left has always wanted mass transportation.
That's right. That's right.
So I don't know. I do think that, you know, we're kind of out in the West with cars. Cars are so big, and I think it's going to be like the Rail Runner. I think we're going to have a white elephant there.
Right.
I mean, the upside is that we'd get a lot of money, I guess, and of course,
right.
You know, I think even this mayor, you know, he may not be Democrat, he's a Republican, but he sees that federal money as an infusion into the economy,
right.
kind of like we do the bases.
Right.
So I don't have any feel. I think it's not going to serve its purpose in the end, I think.
What do you make of the process so far?
Well, it seems like business people are upset, but you know, no matter what you do, and anytime you disrupt their flow of people, if you have construction in front of their building, they're going to be upset.
Right.
I mean, they're upset if you just have broken sewer lines. So,
is it legit, that upsetness in your view?
Well, you know, it's you know, it seems like they're addressing that by moving it very quickly and doing it in segments, you know, which is about the best you can do. But I think you know, the business community, I don't think loves it. I mean, you can see it. There are especially restaurants and people whose you know profits are, you know, like marginal. You know, so
that's right.
Who knows? We'll see.
Laura Sanchez-Rivey, the idea that, you know, the opposition, we had Gene Bernstein and John Hooker, former mayor of Los Ranchos, part of our segment talking about opposition to the event. Have the folks on the pro side, in your mind, made a legitimate case here for the rest of the public? Janice makes a good point. There's no north-south corridor. It's not tied to any other, you know, long-term plan. Have they made their case?
Well, I think, you know, I think an appeals court felt there was enough to at least halt, you know, issue a TRO, an injunction at that point. You know, for me, I was a little bit agnostic, as I think Richard was sort of saying to a certain extent. Because I'm a West Sider. So for me, it really initially wasn't a real big deal. I was concerned, though, that there was that much effort and federal money and local dollars being spent on a corridor that's already got transportation,
yes,
compared to places like the West Side and other areas that are congested that have no adequate transportation. So I did think that that was a problem, and I think it's been mismanaged in terms of trying to come up with a solution where there's been a population growth. It's not like that particular area in terms of population has grown. I mean, I think we've tried to grow it as far as businesses, but there's really nothing to address other areas that have really grown quite a bit. And so I had sort of those general concerns, but then I actually drove down Central a few times, and I realized what the huge concern is. And for me, you know, I basically go to Nob Hill for fun. I mean, I go down there to socialize. I go down there for, you know, business lunches or happy hour, or whatever the case may be, events. And so to go down there, you know, for a Sunday brunch, and it takes you forever to get down there because they've already blocked off areas that they're looking at doing the pre-construction work on. I can completely understand why those businesses are so concerned, because I thought to myself, I'm not going to go down there again for brunch if this is what it's going to take. I'd rather just go to a different part of town. And I think a lot of people will make that decision, and it will impact those businesses. And so I think that on that level, there's absolutely concern to be had, because you're not going to be attracting people to that area like you could be. I think from a process perspective, and you asked this question of Richard, I think they've completely mismanaged this process. I think that the City Council got on board with this idea much earlier than they really should have. They didn't get as much public input, and I think that's what has fueled the opposition to this. And I think that—
And now, just to interrupt you, you've got two councilors now backtracking a bit.
Right, backtracking, and also, you know, there's this proposal now to try to put it on the November ballot, which in a way is sort of kicking the can down the road. I mean, that's going to be really interesting. There's been so much opposition to it that I think in November, this is going to be something that probably, you know, would not pass if things, you know, if the vote were held today, it wouldn't pass because there's been so much bad press about it. We will lose out on federal funds, but I think ultimately what's going to happen down the road is that this is going to be, you know, to use an unfair sort of analogy, this is going to be Mayor Barry's rail runner. You know, this is going to be something, as he looks to governor or whatever else he's going to run, which you know, sources say that he is. This is what's going to carry on in his legacy, and it's going to be a debacle because nobody seems to be supporting this. The supporters are people who made a decision very quickly, clearly didn't look at an environmental impact statement, an environmental assessment, big issues that I think people in that part of the city and all throughout Albuquerque are very concerned about.
But may I defend the mayor really quickly?
Just real quick, let me get Tom in here real quick. I'll circle back to you.
Darn.
Well, you know, exactly. Well, this whole idea of how this has been presented to the public. There's two kinds of campaigns, it seems to me. One, you do have to win votes and money, or just an informational tour. And they've had an informational tour. And I don't think they made a switch at some point. Would you agree with that? You know?
Yeah, I mean, from a communications perspective, and both sides have done very, you know, they've been made good pushes. Whether they were effective is remaining to be seen, but both sides are really being very vocal about their message.
Sure.
Right now, it's the anti-folks who are doing a much better job in saying what they're against about ART than the city is.
What is the city lacking in their presentation?
Oh, gosh.
Not enough time, I guess.
Well, no, I mean, you know, when you look at this, I mean, originally when ART was announced, it was announced and there was a lot of fanfare, but you know, the public perception was very favorable. But then all of a sudden it was like that fell through like a wet paper bag. And here's the reason why, is it would appear that the proper research to gauge public opinion in that particular area was not done. Now, it might have been done, and if it was, then the research totally missed a segment of the population that they could have addressed effectively. But you know, by looking at the communication strategies that are being implemented after the fact, I mean, you just have people swatting at flies right now. They're just trying to, you know, address the tactical as opposed to looking at the strategic of, you know, how do we solve transportation issues and the economic development issues in New Mexico? Because right now, you know, the Mayor Barry's administration doesn't have a whole lot outside of the tech corridor to really hang its hat on. And we need him to be successful. We need them to be successful.
Exactly right. Jen, it's my fault.
Well, I do want to defend the mayor in that he knows very well that $69 million on a total expenditure of $119 million is very important to the city of Albuquerque. It does mean jobs, even though they are short term. And we do understand that there will be a balloon payment come due. There will be. But I want to key on what Tom is saying and what I'm hearing from my neighborhoods that are not going to be serviced by this area. They do not like the design. And there was a lot of fanfare, but the discussion of the design when it got to taking out that lane down the center of Central, taking out the trees, making sure, right, parking is a big deal, crossing, and people who are physically disabled having to cross into the middle and then back again. You know, you can argue that it's going to be safer, but most of them have said, I do not like this, and this is not helpful.
Right.
If you could just visualize the Rail Runner, say, a couple years, 3 years from now, and ask yourself, is it going to help transportation? Is it going to help businesses along Route 66? I don't know. I don't think it will. I mean, I just, it's kind of like the Rail Runner. I mean, we're going to have people commuting back and forth.
In a world of Uber and a world of other choices, right? Is that what you're saying? It just becomes difficult.
I think it's a lot of money and very little return.
Let's see how it plays. We're going to have some other folks come back to the station and keep talking about this because it's just so much more to talk about.